Can a person shift from extroversion to introversion? I have always considered myself a hardcore extrovert, but recently there has been a shift in my energy and in my desires. I feel like over the last 2 years, I've had to ask myself this question: am I an extrovert or am I an introvert? Or am I an introverted extrovert? I'm genuinely surprised by this change in my preferences and in my behavior. Maybe you have noticed a similar change, then maybe you have been as puzzled by it as I am. Hey guys, my name is Paulina if this is your first time seeing me. And I think I still consider myself a relative introvert because I do interact with people a lot. But compared to my previous behavior, this is a whole new, very surprising change in my life. 2 years ago, I graduated from my master's program, and then I entered my quiet season. I feel like before then, my life was filled with people to the very brim. I could be around people 24/7. And to this day, I love people so much and I love being around people. But at the same time, I realized how much I love spending time by myself. Something definitely changed after I graduated. I continued living in New York, but I started working mostly from home. And so I started spending a lot of my days in solitude. I would still see King every day and I would still meet my friends multiple times a week. But I started noticing this preference for being by myself and taking walks by myself, going to coffee shops by myself, spending a lot of time reading and dreaming and thinking and drawing and creating something. I started spending a lot of time contemplating my life, contemplating my choices, and trying to connect with my intuition. I truly entered a quiet season of contemplation. A year ago, I even started running a lot when I was preparing for my half marathon races. And during these runs, at first, I would listen to music or I would listen to podcasts or audiobooks. But then I actually started running without my headphones, just like listening to the sounds of the street or the sounds of Central Park and just getting lost in my own thoughts. It felt almost like a meditation. And throughout these 2 years, I felt this desire to ponder some very profound life questions. I wanted to ask myself, like, what do I want from this life? What do I want to spend my life doing? I was asking myself, how can I be more honest with myself? How can I be more true to myself? I was asking myself, what kind of values do I have and what truly matters to me? I also noticed that being around other people at this time would sometimes muffle my own voice. So I had a hard time hearing my own self sometimes. I also realized that I could never be bored when I was by myself. I feel like when I was younger, I would sometimes be intimidated by, potentially feeling lonely or having a major FOMO. But throughout the last 2 years, I realized that there's so much that I want to do that I can truly never be bored when I'm by myself. So even though all of this is very surprising to me, I definitely started embracing this intentional solitude more. And I'm still in the middle of this surprising quiet season. I also want to talk about a few things that I noticed during this season of change. One of them is how much I get affected by negativity. I truly get weighed down by negativity very, very easily. I think I'm a very almost like porous person. I have very porous boundaries. I'm like a sponge and I just easily absorb the other person's energy whenever I'm talking to someone. So in these last 2 years, I became much more attuned to how I feel around other people. I think I'm definitely a very sensitive and empathetic person. And I think this can be a good trait because I can be there for people and I try my best to listen and to help with advice. But at the same time, I realize that I don't want to be around chronically negative people, and it definitely affects my state of mind. I definitely know that I should work on my boundaries more But at the same time, I just want to limit my exposure to people who can be chronically negative. Because ultimately, I think you can work on your boundaries all you want, but at the same time, if you are next to someone who is just persistently negative, it might chip away at you in this very small way every single day. And over a prolonged period of time, this can lead to a more profound change in you and a change in your attitude towards life. I love being optimistic, and being optimistic is very important to me and to how I prefer to view life. And so now I'm choosing to really, really cherish this attitude and also protect it from some unwanted influences. I also think that sometimes, besides absorbing the negative energy of others, we can simply start regurgitating certain ideas, certain stereotypes that might not be true for us, even if they're positive or neutral or negative. I think it's so common to go out into the world and to hear about all of these appropriate ways to live your life. Some of these stereotypes are very cultural, some of these stereotypes are maybe universal, but it doesn't mean they necessarily have to apply to you. I think one of the cultural stereotypes that I've faced in my life is that all the women have to get married and have to have children, and I've heard it so much, and I can even see some of my friends being deeply affected by this cultural stereotype because it literally sticks to you like a piece of gum, like you are trying to scrub it off, but it sometimes just sticks, and it can be a big struggle to remove this kind of stereotype from your mind. I'm a big believer that every person's path is unique and different, and we're all guided by our own inner voice, and we truly don't know what's best for someone else. We're trying to figure out what's best for us, so I don't think there's some sort of universal standard on what we have to do and at what time we have to do it. So I think that's also why I'm leaning more towards introversion at the moment, because I just want to hear my own voice and I want to hear my own ideas and what's true for me, regardless of what the society thinks should be true for me. Very often when I see people, they truly inspire me. Like, I love seeing my friends. I love meeting new people, like I mentioned before. But sometimes when I hear all of these stereotypes that are doing me a disservice, that's when I want to, go within and just try to understand whether I think the stereotype is applicable to me or it's not. Okay, I want to tell you about this one technique that I sometimes do. I really, really love it, and maybe you will find use for it yourself. So what I do is I just sit down on a rug and I just put my phone away, I put everything away, and then I close my eyes and I'm just sitting there with my eyes closed. And I ask myself certain questions. It can be a yes or no questions, or it can be a more like elaborate question that needs an elaborate answer. But I just ask myself questions in my own head, and usually an answer just comes right away, immediately. I don't know if this is true for everyone, but for me, I think my intuition just tells me an immediate answer. It can be a question like, do I want to go on this trip? Or do I want to be with this person? Or do I want to build this kind of career in this field? And usually, even before I finish the question in my head, it's instantly a yes or a no. I love doing this because it makes me feel like I connect to myself instead of trying to connect, to someone's ideas out there or just to follow in someone else's footsteps. This way, I know what's true for me. And I feel like over the course of my life, I've definitely made a lot of decisions that deviate from the common path, but I feel like these decisions ultimately shaped me into who I am, and they just emphasized for me how important it is for me to be honest with myself. Another thing I want to say is that I think during these 2 years, I became more selfish in a way. Before this period of my life unfolded, I used to be friends with everyone. And I felt very happy keeping in touch with so many people. But I also think I didn't pay attention to how certain people made me feel. If someone wanted to meet up or do something, I would just automatically say yes, because I had a very hard time saying no to anyone. And also I think saying no was not even an option in my mind. During these last 2 years, because I started paying attention to how certain people make me feel, I stopped being friends with certain people, or I stopped seeking contact with certain people. For example, I noticed that I used to be friends with someone for a long time who used to only ever talk about themselves. And I remember in the past, I would notice it, but I would just disregard it and I would remain friends with them. And I just thought it was like, okay, I'm just accepting them for who they are. And so what, they just want to talk about themselves all the time. But then I noticed that it bothered me that this person did not have any interest in anyone else. And so I decided to reduce contact with this person. And this is something I've never really done before. Before, I would just go along with anything and consider that behavior just as a part of being an extrovert. If you're an extrovert, you love being in touch with everyone. That's what I previously thought. Another example is that one of my friends got into a relationship, and every time I would meet them and their new partner, I noticed that I felt very, very tense around this new partner, and I just really didn't feel good. I felt a lot of negative energy, and every single outing with this couple just became dreadful to me. And again, I just decided to not see this couple anymore unless we run into each other, or I guess see each other at a party or something like that. And again, before, I would always be very polite, and I would think that, so what that I don't feel good around this person? I still should be a good friend. I should be convenient. I should be there for, whoever needs me there. And I would just completely disregard how I feel. I would just write it off. But now maybe I'm just becoming more selfish or more selective, but I'm just not willing to do this anymore. I'd rather spend time with myself than intentionally find an interaction that doesn't feel good to me. Maybe I'm sharing very basic things in this video, but all of these things are actually big revelations to me, because I never used to act this way before. Another part of my newfound introversion that I still feel partially guilty about is that I'm not as responsive over text or over voice notes. And this is not because I don't want to interact with my friends, but I realize that interacting through the medium of my phone just doesn't feel the same. It feels like I'm staring into this tiny screen. And yes, I love my friends very dearly, but at the same time, it just doesn't fulfill me in the same way as a real interaction does, like a real life, sitting down at a dinner or at a coffee shop or going over to someone's house. It just has a very different feel to it. I also wanted to mention that my relationship shaped this in a massive way, because King is literally my best friend, and I see him every single day. And so I feel like when I'm with him, I can share so much of myself that maybe my need to be around a lot of other people has naturally diminished, because I'm just so fulfilled in this relationship and in our interactions. The funny thing is that we took the Big 5 personality test. If any of you guys want to take it, I will leave the link down below, but it's a very famous test in psychology, and it evaluates your personality based on 5 criteria. And one of the criteria is extroversion. And I think I was at the 95th percentile or 96th percentile for extroversion, a very similar result to King's. So technically, when I respond to all these questions, I'm an extrovert, but I guess at the same time, I'm just going through this season of change for whatever reason. Besides being in a relationship, I think living in New York City also constantly shapes me because the city itself is very loud and it's very busy. And so maybe my desire for intentional solitude is something like an antidote, you know, like I'm trying to diminish how New York City is affecting me. I'm trying to achieve some sort of balance. That's why I'm pulling back in terms of communicating with others, in terms of being social. I feel like the city can become so overwhelming sometimes that I just need this higher level of introversion to maintain my inner peace. So to wrap up this video, I just want to tell you that I think it's always the best course of action to listen to your intuition. Listen to yourself first and foremost. Prioritize that voice above anything else that you hear. I think it's natural to experience FOMO, especially in a city like New York. But at the same time, you have to prioritize what you feel is right for you. Let me know if anything like this has ever happened to you, whether you've ever shifted from extroversion to introversion or vice versa. And thank you so much for being here with me, guys. I hope this video was helpful in some way, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye, guys.